After sitting with verses 13 and 14, something inside me keeps echoing as I enter verse 15. So, as much as in me is. I stop here, I read it again. Why would Paul write it like that? Why not just say I'm ready or I want to preach? Why the phrase, as much as in me is? It makes me pause, think, feel. It's as if Paul isn't just stating his readiness, he's revealing something much deeper. A burning, a longing, a fullness that's been building up inside him for years. And now, he just can't hold it in anymore. I sit quietly and wonder, have I ever felt that? A fire inside that won't let go until it's shared. This doesn't feel like performance. It doesn't sound like pressure. It feels like love, matured. Paul isn't trying to prove anything. He's not coming to the Romans to showcase how much he knows. It's more like there's something alive in him, Christ himself, and it's so real, so formed, so burning within, that he must release it. As much as in me is, he's saying, everything that Christ has worked in me, all that I've received, all that has grown and formed in my spirit, I want to pour it into you. It's not a speech, it's not a lesson, it's life. It's a heart ignited. And suddenly I see it clearer. He's not just willing to come, he needs to. The fire of love compels him. The Christ in him has become too big to stay contained. And I find myself praying, Lord, let Christ so burn in me that I no longer try to contain him. Let my inner life become so full, so alive, that I too can say as much as in me is, not with pride, but with holy hunger to give. And then Paul says, I'm ready to preach the gospel to you that are at Rome also. Again, I slow down. Wait, preach the gospel? I thought in verse 11, Paul said he wanted to impart something. He spoke of a spiritual gift, a kind of grace, a living Christ within him that could be transferred, shared, experienced. That sounded so intimate, so deeply relational. But now, he says, preach. I pause because in my mind, the word preach has always meant something different. A pulpit, a loud voice, a well-crafted sermon, a preacher speaking and others listening. Is that what Paul meant? But as I go deeper into the Greek, the word used is euangelizos, to proclaim good news. Not just announce something publicly, but to bring news so good it demands to be shared. It's not just words, it's not just content, it's the living Christ being proclaimed. And something begins to stir in me. Maybe Paul wasn't separating preaching and imparting after all. Maybe for him, preaching was imparting. Because when he speaks of Christ, he's not delivering doctrine, he's delivering life. The Christ in him overflows, not as a performance, but as a pouring out. Preaching becomes an act of love, a transfer, a proclamation of the best news ever, not merely in speech, but in spirit and truth. I think of my own journey. How often have I reduced the gospel to a message, an explanation, a memorized story? But Paul wasn't rehearsing something. He was releasing someone. This gospel, this evangelion was alive in him. And when he preached, it wasn't for applause or approval. It was for communion, for connection, for awakening. And I asked myself, do I preach like that? Do I speak of Christ like one sharing a fire from his chest or like one repeating lines on a page? Paul's preaching wasn't just about getting the message out. It was about getting the life in. The gospel is not a lecture. It's a living invitation. And I see now, when Paul says he's ready to preach, he's saying he's ready to bleed love, to pour out Christ, to bring a message that is more than words. It's a person stepping into their hearts. But now I pause again on this one word, gospel. It seems so familiar, yet so easily misused. I hear it everywhere. This is the gospel. That preacher is not preaching the true gospel, prosperity gospel, grace gospel, gospel-centered living. And I start to feel, honestly, confused. How can something meant to set people free become so diluted, rebranded, even weaponized? So I go back to the Greek, the word euangelion. It literally means good news, but that's too shallow a translation. It's not just good, it's life-changing. It's the kind of news that makes captives leap, that turns weeping into worship, that makes dead men live. But here's the problem. In our modern world, everything can be framed as good news if it feels good, looks empowering, or promises relief. That's how deception creeps in. Legalism wrapped in performance and spiritual pride can feel like good news to the one craving control. Cheap grace, disconnected from transformation, can feel like good news to the one tired of trying. Even manipulation, packaged with positive thinking, can feel like gospel if it stirs hope, even if it's false. And suddenly I realize something sobering. The gospel is not just what feels good. The gospel is what births Christ in you. That's the test. Any gospel that doesn't form Christ in you, that doesn't lead to abiding surrender, resurrection life, that's another gospel. Paul knew this. That's why in Galatians 1, he thundered against those preaching another gospel. Not because he was defensive of his ministry, but because he was jealous for Christ to be formed in the church. This gospel he was ready to preach in Rome wasn't about ideas. It was about a person. The gospel is the story, the power, the presence of Jesus crucified, risen, and living inside you. It doesn't manipulate behavior. It transforms identity. It doesn't motivate with fear. It awakens with love. And I see now Paul's gospel wasn't one of many. It was the only one that could make slaves into sons, dead hearts into dwelling places of God. So I tremble a little. I ask the Spirit to search me. Have I believed a gospel of comfort, but not transformation? Have I traded the real for something that simply agrees with my emotions or needs? Oh Lord, I don't want just good advice. I want the good news, the only news that forms Christ in me.